Categorize modern teaching as a profession in one word now.
Failure. I'm a product of public education. When it's done properly, and it used to be done properly, I believe, students will learn, which gives the kids the platform, the springboard to jump off into life. What I saw as a teacher, and I saw other teachers going, there wasn't like just my special take on it or whatever, was, basically the schools fearful of parents, of any kind of legal issues, any rocking of the boat. And I understand why the schools do it. I'm not saying they're doing it and it makes no sense. The schools are so terrified and frozen by fear of any kind of lawsuit or anything that coming out from outside. Like my dad used to say, though, you fight the good fight, and you can't back down or acquiesce when you're right, because then truth takes a hit. When your kid comes into my classroom and calls me a fucking retard, or the secretary a fucking cunt, excuse me, ladies, that kid does not have, right now we have education's a right in this country. The rest of the world sees it as a privilege. And I think it should be the same thing in this country. Not that we exclude anybody, but if your child wants to come into school and disrupt his kid, her kid from learning, then to me, just common sense is you have to take that cancer out because everybody else is suffering. And it didn't happen that way. The kids, pretty much had run roughshod over the teachers. I was fine in my classroom. When I closed my door, I have no problems in my classroom. Classroom management wasn't a problem for me. The kids got their learning from me. Some kids I'm sure probably thought I was a tough guy or whatever, but I was teaching the way I was taught. And very successful at it. The first 2 years I taught socially emotionally disturbed, which is now called emotional support. Kids that know other teachers could handle. Special ed teachers with 25, 30 years experience were failing in this classroom. So when I left in 91 to come help my dad, I still needed a job. Went into the S&ED classroom. It was the only teaching job I could get at that time, and was more successful than the previous 5 teachers had been in there, because I didn't go in there with this mindset, well, we got to assuage little Sammy or Johnny here and kiss their rear end and make their parents happy. I taught them the way I was taught.
They were as accountable as the other students in the school were.
Absolutely, it's not an excuse.
Okay.
And you step out of line just like any other kid, or I did when I was in school. You get slammed back in line if you don't do it voluntarily. The principals, I only had one principal that I ever really respected. His name was Ron Young in Western Beaver. The entity that I worked for was called the Beaver Valley Intermediate Unit. They oversaw the special education in the county. My bosses were there, but they rented a classroom in this school. So I still had to use the same administrators for discipline and other issues like that. He was the only one that ever supported me. He knew where I was coming from, and like an old school Marine, this guy's handling his kids and never have any problem with them. Used to be all kind of problems with them. And but other principals, I liked them all. They were all likable guys. But when a kid can get up and walk out of a classroom multiple times, when a kid can walk out of school, when kids can leave the school grounds. One day I hear a bunch of cars in the teacher's parking lot where all the teachers are allowed. I hear the door opening and closing, a lot of voices. I open the back door and I see 60, 70 kids getting in cars and driving away. Now your kid, when they come to my school, I'm their teacher, they're my responsibility from the time they step on the school bus and step off the school bus. So if your child gets injured, car accident, kidnapped, whatever, that's on us. Mm-hmm. So I see these kids leaving, and I'm going to the cafeteria for duty with the principal. He and I had the second period cafeteria duty. So I walk in, I said, John, we got a problem. About 60, 70 kids just walked out the back, driving away. He goes, that's nothing. It's nothing. He said, it's tradition here. The kids always do that. I said, it's the first time I've seen them do it. He said, they just go to McDonald's and have it's not a big deal. They'll come back. I said, well, what happens if somebody wrecks into and kills one of those kids, or somebody robs McDonald's with it and somebody gets shot, or a million other things that can happen? Not likely, but can. I said, never happened before. And the nonchalance to it was just mind-boggling to me, because I'm thinking it's not my responsibility those kids are out there, but I'm more worried about it than this guy is. Another time I had a kid in my class, or I can tell you a zillion of these stories, but another time I have a girl in my classroom. This is October. She's been written up 52 times at this point. Probably 10 by me and other teachers, 42 times by other teachers. I'm giving an exam. Now, in teaching methodologies, if I'm giving a test and you're talking, I don't know if you're giving him the answers or somebody's giving you the answers. So to maintain the veracity of the classroom and the tests, you have to maintain that control over the classroom. Well, this girl was I kept hearing these noises. I was grading last period's test. These kids were taking their tests, and I keep hearing this noise, and every time I looked up, of course, it would stop. So I put it down and keep my head, like this, and I'm looking, and I finally see what's going on. This girl was taking a pen, and she's shoving it down her throat, just with the tip of the pen, like she's giving oral sex to a pen. But not once or twice like a joke, going in and out, in and out, in and out. So instead of saying something out loud, hey, so-and-so, stop doing that, I get up and I walk, because I didn't want every other kid to notice. So I get up and I walk over, and I lean down, and I said, so-and-so, Mr. Martin would like to get started on your test now. She goes, look, everybody, I got Mr. Martin mad, and she did it again like this, and, and she spat on my feet. My head about explodes at this point, ready to franchise her ass, And so I take her to the hallway. Now, this school building was built like a T. My classroom was in the upper wing of this backside of the T, office down here. Even if you were walking at a fast pace, it would take 10 minutes to walk down there and get back. Less than 5 minutes, I see this girl walking back down the hall towards my class. Now, of course, the kids have all started talking and laughing and stuff, so the test is invalid. Right. I'm now going to go home tonight and recreate a new test. The kids have to learn again, the ones that were ready. She comes walking back to tries to my classroom, meet her at the door. I said, I told you to get your butt to the office. She goes, I was down in that office, and they told me to come back to your office. You're a motherfucker. You're a motherfucker. And she gets louder and louder. I grabbed her by the arm and I said, unless you want me to lose my fucking temper, you better get your fucking ass back down to that office. So she walks back down to the office. I don't see her again. That was period 4. I have lunch duty period 5 with the principal, period 6, period 7, period 8. I have a phone in my classroom. I have a loudspeaker in my classroom. And my classroom was, and that T, my classroom was halfway down this hall, so not far from the office. Principal never says a word to me during the day. I walk in to get my mail at the end of the day, and he comes up to me and starts with his finger like this in my face. How dare you send a kid back to my class? Don't you ever send a kid back? He's doing this kind of stuff, screaming at me.
Because you sent it to the office?
Yeah. So I smacked his hand on my face. I said, John, get your finger out of my face for $31,000 a year. He goes, you don't understand how angry I am. Don't you ever do that again. And he kept doing that and screaming at me like I was an idiot. And I said, well, and I did the same thing back. I said, well, don't you ever send a kid back to my class when I'm giving a test and she's pretending to give fucking blowjobs to the pen and fucking spitting on my feet. He stopped and sort of back. Everybody in the office went dead quiet. So everybody looking to see this confrontation, And, well, I'm sorry, I had no idea that's what had happened. I said, well, you had period 5 lunch with me, period 6, period 7, period 8, you could have come and asked me. But instead, this girl walks in there and you automatically assume she's right and I'm wrong. That's a disconnect. The education ain't working. Every teacher sees those type of stories every day, and some much worse. We just saw the stabbing in Murraysville, Pennsylvania, right close to my house. At the time I was teaching, another teacher was attacked and hit with a hammer by some students. I walk into schools now with my kids when they're going to wrestling tournaments and things. And I see metal detectors, and it's mind-boggling to me because I don't think these kids today are any tougher than kids, probably not as tough as kids were in my day and before my day. Why could those principals get me in line and you in line and all the rest of us in line back then? And today they need metal detectors and cops walking through the halls.
And what you're going to have now with the influx of charter schools is they will teach and public schools will be prisons.
Yeah, that's and we're starting to see that now. Yeah. The cream of the crop. When I was in school, it was very heterogeneous. You had kids of all levels, A, B, C's, and D's, and F's. And so these kids that were good students could somehow pull the other kids up with classwork and whatnot. Now they're slicing off the best of that best. And what you're being left with is more and more of the gunk, And those kids are both sides are missing the boat because the kids that were the upper end take ownership over helping the kids at the lower end. Not always, but mostly. And the kids at this end don't have anybody to look up to aspire to. And so now you've got two very homogenous groups that are separate from each other. And these ones are learning and sucking resources. These ones are not. It's just a crazy way to do the system.
If and both packs of teachers are equally accountable now on their education reform. They have two different roads that they're on.
Yeah, and so you leave me with a group of these kids that do not want to be here's. And you have all these kids.
Right.
You look like a great teacher because the grades are up, and this teacher looks like a bad teacher because these grades are all down. So it's loaded from the beginning. And when you start to see the pays, that when they first set the system up where teachers would become administrators, it was supposed to be 15 to 20% additional pay. It's now exponential. So these people sitting in the office, the superintendent at the Pittsburgh School District, I think a couple years ago, signed for $1.7 million a year or something, some crazy number. Now I trust me, he would not have made that when he was teaching, you know.
Wow.
And this becomes more of an economic mode. Don't, Mr. Martin, you rock the boat, because
Right.
you might endanger my paycheck.
Absolutely.
And instead of, in the last part of the equation, the kids should be the all-encompassing, ubiquitous reason we're there. They're the last part of the equation anybody thinks about. Do I have supplies? Is my office cool enough? Is it big enough? Do I have this? Can I go to this lecture? Can I do all these things? And nobody gives a damn about the kids. They'll tell you to the blue in the face they do. What actions speak louder than words. And when you look at the actions, I guess the saddest epitaph I could give is after what I saw in my alma mater teaching there, I have steadfastly, to my own detriment, because if I said my kids could go to my home school where I live, the big chip that's played against me is, well, you don't want your kids to go to New Brighton. So that's one of the reasons they quote as me not getting 50% custody of my kids. I don't want my kids walking in their building because I saw firsthand what was going on there. And I can't think of a sadder epitaph or a more biting conviction than a former student of this school who taught in this school saying, under no circumstances are my children entering this building.
Yeah.
And those same people are the same people that are worried about their paychecks and worried about their position and their days off in the summer. And the teachers, I saw some amazingly creative teachers when I was in teaching. And I also saw a lot of junk that shouldn't even be dumping garbage or cared to be. Public schools are going to have to either change the way they do business or they'll be a distant memory.
Absolutely. How did you deal with kids that remembered you from TV?
Most of the kids knew I was on TV. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. There was one incident that happened that got me in a little bit of hot water. When ECW first I forget exactly the time frame, but very early in ECW tenure, we did a thing at a New York nightclub where I think we were announcing the TV show or something. And Paul had rented a limousine with a bunch of girls, beautiful girls. Really pretty girls. We drive around the block and we come pulling back up and the cameras get set and they get us coming out with all these girls. And we go to the nightclub and Paul's telling the girls, dance around and do this. And one girl starts taking my shirt off and next thing you know, my shirt's halfway off and the girls are playing with my hair. Well, somehow somebody got a picture of that. And some of the kids brought it to school and I don't show that to anybody because that's the kind of stuff that these public school systems don't come out and say, you're immoral. That's, and this, again, the morality police is a thing that I got to laugh at because there are some attorneys out there go, well, isn't that immoral what you did? Well, based on whose morality? Because morality is not a universal thing. Your morality is different than my morality, is different from their morality. And history is rife, lest we say the adage again, those who fail to learn history's lessons doomed to repeat its mistakes. History is rife with people saying my morality is right and yours is wrong, creating wars and conflict and problems. There's no universal truths out there. Very few of them. And these schools go by that. And there's instances going on now where people are losing their teaching licenses because 25 years ago they were caught at a concert when they were 17 years old with a joint or something. That to me is absurd.
Even dumber things. You see like Atifa teachers on Facebook holding up a cocktail in Tahiti over the summer, if it's still on there in September.
Sure.
Current cases like that.
Yeah.
But there were no kids. You know how you guys would be challenged in a bar when somebody, those are those wrestlers? But was it like that at school at all? Like, he's a wrestler? Come on.
No. First of all, because again, I had a reputation. The kids knew, first of all, they bought part of the reputation from TV.
Maybe it helped.
The other part of it was the kids that thought they were the tough guys, if I would just single them out, like when they would start to go to that direction, single them out and do the same stuff. I would grab them by their shirt and pull them out and put them against the wall, that kind of stuff. It's funny how you get somebody's attention very quickly when you move to a physical aspect. I never had any overt problems. In fact, kids would stop fighting. One time in the cafeteria, two kids down at the far end of the cafeteria start slugging. They're beating the crap out of each other, and the kids are all standing around. Well, anytime I saw a fight, I'd let it go on for a few seconds because anybody that's ever been punched knows they don't like it. So I just let it go for a while, let them get the taste of what it feels like. And then I'd walk down. I wouldn't run down and say, hey, you get hurt, you get hurt. So I'd start walking down. And as I'm walking down, you'd hear people go, Mr. Martin's coming, Mr. Martin's coming, Mr. Martin's coming. And all of a sudden the kids would go and stop. And so the principals always loved that part of it. And another time, and again, to show you how the administrators don't work with us, I had just left the faculty lounge, going up to that period 4 class in the upper bend of the school, had my coffee mug full, carrying my books in this hand. And I'm walking down the hall, and there's kids waiting for the home ec room to open. And there's two kids doing this stuff, you know, back jab slapping each other, you know, playfully it looked like. I say, hey guys, settle down. We'll take a few more steps. As I take about 4 or 5 more steps, I see another teacher looking this way, but he's going like this. And suddenly he goes, get out of the way. He starts running down the hall. I turn around, and these two kids are full on cracking each other. So I walked into the classroom, Jerry Schmidt's classroom, algebra class. I put my coffee mug down, put my books down. This Mr. Inge gets there first, grabs one kid against the wall, and the kid's hitting him. He grabs the kid off that's got the kid against the wall and slams him to the floor. I take the other. I actually didn't put my coffee mug. I still have my coffee mug in my hand. I put my books down. I put my forearm on the kid and push him against the wall. I said, it's over. We're done. So I take him down the hall, down to the office. Go back up to my class. The next day, I get called to the principal's office. I walk in, and there's a parent sitting there with this kid that I put against the wall. As I walk in the room, he's standing, you the motherfucker that beat my kid's ass yesterday? The principal says nothing. The principal, and I went, excuse me? He said it again. I went, like waiting for John to get it. Who's now the superintendent at Beaver, Pennsylvania. Looked back at the guy, and the guy says, I said, let me ask you a question. Did you take your kid to the hospital last night? He goes, no. I said, you still have his teeth? He goes, yeah. And I said, no broken bones? He goes, no. I said, then I didn't fucking touch your kid, John. And I walk out. I'm not going to be talked to like that by a parent. You know, I'll be happy to answer any question, but don't you come in and, you know, that kind of, that's ridiculous. More ridiculous, the administrator sitting here watching it.
Right.
And so I walked out, and again, he said, don't you ever walk out of my office when you have a parent? And I said, John, look, we've been through this kind of stuff. I'll talk to any parent till I'm blue in the face if they're respectful and polite. But where were you? He told me that wasn't his job. And well, that's not your job, and tell me whose it is. And I think now that guy, this superintendent, making close to $200,000 in a very small district that the tax base probably isn't there to pay. But
wow.
Good job, John.
Well, John, shows you how to get to the top.
Yeah, that's one way or the other.